Andrew McCabe, begging earlier today to keep his big fat government pension, all while the pension may be the least of his worries, as there is talk tonight of possible criminal charges against the former Deputy FBI Director McCabe. This is beyond significant. For McCabe to lose his retirement means that he did something very wrong. And sources are telling us that, in fact, McCabe could end up facing charges. Sarah Carter is here with all the explosive details coming up. And also breaking tonight, the Destroy Trump media has a new method for spreading their fake news. They just recycle old stories to try and damage the Trump administration. We have the evidence. New York Times is claiming that special counsel Robert Mueller subpoenaed the Trump Organization, but the Trump Organization is saying it's not true. They've already been voluntarily cooperating with Mueller for months. And President Trump gets tough on Russia in response to election interference. This is something President Obama never did, despite numerous warnings going back to 2014. An explosive new report. The Hill's John Solomon is here about James Comey's incompetence and warnings he ignored. We're going to cover all of that and so much more. An important breaking news hour coming up on Hannity. All right, so many major new developments, new information tonight because of a mountain of irrefutable evidence. Pressure is building at this hour for the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, to now appoint a second special counsel. Now, Senators Chuck Grassley, Lindsey Graham, along with Senators John Cornyn, Tom Tillis, they are now joining the chorus that are demanding that Sessions now finally take action so real crimes that we know are committed can now be investigated. Take a look.
The FBI and the Department of Justice were corrupt, in my view, when it came to handling the email investigation of Clinton, and the entire FISA warrant application process was abused.
Chances that you get a special counsel in addition to what's already there?
I will be shocked if somebody doesn't see the inherent conflict in the Department of Justice regarding investigating itself. High probability.
I'm going to use as much leverage as I can, and I think I have a lot to get the job done.
And sources telling us tonight that there is a very high probability that Sessions, in fact, will act and that he will appoint a second special counsel. This will be a huge victory for all of you, the American people. It is why we have been calling for a second special counsel for over a year. Now, this investigation is now reaching a new level, and we're told there will be new explosive developments unfolding in coming days. In a letter to the AG, Jeff Sessions, and Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, well, Senator Grassley and Graham, they explain exactly why a second special counsel is in fact needed. These scandals directly implicate key members of the FBI and the Department of Justice. So it makes it impossible for those organizations to investigate themselves. Now, key sections of the Grassley-Graham criminal referral against the fake news dossier author, Christopher Steele, now tonight they are unredacted. And Grassley and Graham rightly are asking the DOJ to investigate Christopher Steele for lying to the FBI about his contacts with the media. Remember, Steele was shopping the fake news dossier around to everybody in the mainstream media, all these outlets like the New York Times, Washington Post, Yahoo News, fake news, CNN. Oh, and by the way, Steele is a foreign actor in bed with phony Russian sources. Even he didn't believe what he printed in the dossier. I thought that was supposed to be bad for America, criminal even, that in fact Steele would be working as a non-foreign actor with Russians to influence an American election. Did he ever register with the U.S. government? Now, also tonight, brand new news. Fox News reporting disgraced former FBI Director Andrew McCabe. This is huge. Is now begging top DOJ officials, remember, he's a former deputy director of the FBI, that he not be fired because starting Sunday, he would begin to get his lucrative government pension. He's set to retire on Sunday, but he's likely going to be fired tomorrow. Now, the fact that McCabe is even at this point is so significant, and it means something, what? McCabe did something really, really wrong. You don't get fired over nothing, especially being the deputy FBI director working at the Bureau for over 20 years. And sources are telling us tonight that McCabe could face multiple criminal charges. Remember, McCabe, he was put on leave after the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, remember, he found out what we will find out soon, what is being exposed in the upcoming Inspector General's report. And for the IG report, don't think that what McCabe did happened in a vacuum. Remember, McCabe didn't do this alone. And the IG report is supposed to cover, look at the list, the corrupt Clinton email investigation, Hillary having that unsecure server that was stored in the mom and pop shop bathroom closet where she deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails, and her aides were smashing devices and acid washing and bleach pit. And then, of course, there's the Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton. That's only a small fraction of what the Inspector General is now investigating. And then you have what I call the exoneration before investigation. You had Comey and Strzok and Page and other top FBI officials. They put the fix in. They concluded their investigation long before they even interviewed Hillary Clinton and 17 other key witnesses, which, by the way, goes against what James Comey said under oath when he claimed in front of Congress he didn't reach a conclusion on the Clinton email investigation until after interviewing Hillary. But that's not true. We know it's not true. So you have Hillary, she rigged her primary, she has her friends at the FBI, then put the fix in as it relates to crimes she committed, then she tries to influence the general election, paying over $12 million to a guy outside of America for Russian government lies and propaganda, all to lie to the American people. By the way, Robert Mueller, how about investigating real crimes tonight? And by the way, since we found out that those Clinton bought and paid for lies, which the FBI, they never verified, they never corroborated, well, then they took those lies to the FISA judge, and they used the lies and Russian propaganda to get a warrant to spy on a member of the Trump campaign. Well, that then, of course, gave them access to Trump campaign communications. Now, remember, the FBI's own protocols and FISA laws, it says that information needs to be verified and corroborated independently before it ever goes to a FISA court judge. That never happened, and it didn't happen once. FISA judges were lied to on 4 separate occasions. This is beyond a massive scandal, and I know the media is ignorant, lazy, and overpaid. But it's why Jeff Sessions is now looking to the Inspector General and now looking into these severe FISA abuses. But remember, here's the problem. The IG, Inspector General Horowitz, he has no prosecutorial powers. Hence, you need the second special counsel like yesterday. It all needs to be investigated. People need to be exposed. Crimes were committed at the highest levels, and people in the end need to go to jail. The full story needs to come out. You deserve that and so much more from the people that are supposed to serve you in government. All right, also tonight, we have breaking news on President Trump and Russia. Now, it doesn't exactly fit in the narrative that Democrats and members of the Destroy Trump media have been pushing for months. Now, the Trump administration, they're cracking down on Russia in a massive way. Now, this morning, the Treasury Department announced new targeted sanctions against dozens of Russian entities and individuals involved in cyber attacks and election interference in the 2016 presidential election. And that's not all. President Trump, he's joining leaders from Germany and France and the United Kingdom in a joint statement condemning the Putin regime for brutally poisoning a former double agent and his daughter last week in England. Now, the pair remain alive, but they're in critical condition in a British hospital. Now, this all comes months after President Trump introduced his administration's first sanctions against Russia, meant to punish the Putin regime for its actions in Crimea. Well, that happened during the Obama years, as well as other human rights violations. Now, of course, this tough policy, it does stand in stark contrast to what happened under the Obama administration and when Hillary was Secretary of State. Remember that lame Russian reset button that she handed over to her counterpart? And continuing with Obama's total inaction during Russia's hostile takeover of Crimea, despite warnings from world leaders, our own intelligence agency, and even Congressman Devin Nunes. Remember, Devin Nunes wrote this op-ed warning then-President Obama about the Kremlin's hostile actions in Eastern Europe and elections, and warned specifically about the 2016 elections. And the Obama administration, they also dropped the ball in the Middle East when Russia boosted the Assad regime in their fight against the Syrian rebels. Remember the red line? Assad crossed it and nothing happened. He gassed his own people. Russia supported it. Obama stood by and did nothing. And the Obama administration wasn't any better on Russian election interference. According to experts, a brand new book, Michael Isikoff, former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, he issues a quote, a stand-down order to officials developing an aggressive response to Putin's meddling. Now, remember, when President Obama told then-candidate Trump, do you remember this? Stop whining. You know, no serious person thinks that our elections could ever be influenced by hacking. Come on, stop being a whiner. Take a look.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past or that there are instances in which that will happen this time. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
So let's get this straight. There's Obama, weak on Russia's hostile takeover of Crimea, weak on Russia's support for Assad using gas on his own people, weak on Russia's election hacking, warned 2 years before the 2016 election, and the media is only focused on Trump's ties to Russia. Mr. Obama, where were you? Why didn't you act? I've said it before. I'll say it again. Journalism in this country is dead. It doesn't exist. We break more news here than all these so-called news people put together. Also breaking tonight, speaking of the fake news media, they're hard at work, desperately trying to stop stories about real Democratic scandals, the ones we're reporting, because it's going to boomerang back on them. For over a year, the deceitful fake news media in this country has been flat out lying to you, the American people, day by day, hour by hour. And now the biased press, they're employing a brand new tactic. You got to pay attention to spread completely false information. Now, the New York Times is claiming to have a blockbuster story about special counsel Robert Mueller issuing a subpoena to the Trump Organization to turn over documents. Okay, this particular story is a definition of fake news. It's a smear to damage the Trump administration, and here's why. Take a look at this statement earlier today. Trump Organization. Since July of 2017, we have advised the public that the Trump Organization is fully cooperative with all investigations, including the special counsel, and are responding to all their requests. This is old news, and our assistance and cooperation with the various investigations remains the same today. Oh, old news recycled by pathetic liberal lapdog media so-called journalists. They have wasted 14 months beating the drum night after night, night after night, day after day, hour after hour about a conspiracy theory. None exists. No evidence exists. It's been a big lie. And the media has deliberately spread false information and propaganda, which is exactly what Putin and the Russians want. Isn't that what they wanted to do? Sow discord in America? All the media seems to care about is damaging and destroying President Trump, delegitimizing him. And they're also trying to draw the president's attention away from the massive Democratic scandals and not let anybody else in the media focus on cases where we actually have real evidence that's incontrovertible, real facts, real evidence. And as for Robert Mueller's special counsel, this latest leak is not surprising. What Mueller's doing is deliberate. The special counsel, his team of Democratic donors, Hillary donors, Obama donors, DNC donors, they are selectively leaking daily to the media to keep President Trump off balance. Mueller doesn't care about the truth or evidence or facts because he's been on a witch hunt. Look at the team he's put together. And the leaks are obviously intentional because it happens every day. And if Mueller really cared about uncovering real crimes, real wrongdoing, Mueller, you'd be investigating them. You know, if Mueller's going to keep expanding his mandate, why doesn't he focus on the Clinton bought and paid for Russian dossier with Russian lies? Does Mueller not care that Hillary paid for this Russian propaganda and she did it to influence an election? Does Mueller not care that Christopher Steele is an unregistered foreign agent who hates President Trump? Does Mueller not care about the FBI lying to a FISA judge not once, twice, 3 times, but 4 times, using an unverified dossier as the bulk of the application to get a warrant from FISA judges to spy on a campaign associate so they have access to everything in that campaign? Does Mueller not care that this FISA warrant likely gave access to all of Trump campaign's communications during an election? I can go on all night. Does Robert Mueller, sir, do you really not care that Clinton fixed and had fixed for her that email investigation and we know crimes were committed? Or the unmasking scandal, a 350% increase in 1 year? Or the Uranium One scandal? You were the FBI director at the time. We had an FBI informant that had infiltrated Putin's criminal scheme to control America's uranium. Well, you have no problem going down every other rabbit hole, Mr. Mueller. Why don't you look into these scandals? This is why we need the second special counsel, someone that is going to lead from the outside this swamp. You can't have people involved in these scandals investigating themselves. That means Mueller, that means Comey, they have these friendships going on here. Rod Rosenstein, they're all BFF, old colleagues. You really think they're going to hold themselves and each other accountable? Of course, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he created this special counsel witch hunt. Now he needs to fix it. You can't be confirmed the AG and then the next day recuse yourself. And by the way, cite the wrong law, as Greg Jarrett pointed out last night. We need the second independent prosecutor. Now, if Sessions knew he was going to recuse himself, he never should have accepted the job as Attorney General. Look at the chaos that as a result of all of this. Here's a key fact. Greg Jarrett pointed this out. This is where we cite. Sessions cited the wrong law as the justification for recusing himself. He's the Attorney General. So the burden of all of this, that is dragging this country down, falls squarely on Jeff Sessions' shoulders. Tonight, Mr. Attorney General, do your job and fix the mess you created. And also tonight, another damning report about James Comey's incompetence and his highly questionable conduct while leading the FBI. Friend John Solomon reporting that the longtime head of the FBI Telecommunications Surveillance Unit is saying that he warned James Comey about how that particular spy program was dangerously ineffective in catching terrorists. Comey never tried to fix it. That's like Obama was warned about Russian collusion and influence on our elections and did nothing and laughed at the idea. Here's what the retired special agent told John Solomon. Take a look.
I believe that the program as it was ripe for potential abuses, regardless of how it's abused, but it could be. And frankly, I see what's been happening in the last year and a half, and that just proves the point that this program could be abused and that it would not be used for the purposes that it was intended for.
All right, a lot to get into tonight. Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, Fox News analyst Greg Jarrett, and from the Hill, we welcome back John Solomon. Sarah, let's start with you. Let's start with McCabe. Let's start with a special counsel now seems inevitable, and how much trouble Andrew McCabe is in tonight beyond a pension.
I think a special counsel is inevitable. It's going to happen, according to the sources that I've spoken with. And McCabe is in a lot of hot water, Sean. It's not just about his pension. According to the sources I've spoken with, McCabe will be fired. It'll be surprising if he's not. Right now, that's what I'm hearing. And secondly, there are a number of charges that they're looking at based on different statutes. And this I've heard from several different sources. Now, I did contact the FBI and asked for comment, and they told me they could not comment on McCabe whatsoever. They did hear me out, but they would not comment on this whatsoever, and particularly on any possible charges. Remember, General Flynn was charged for basically saying that he didn't tell the whole truth to the FBI. Now, that's still up for debate right now because we know that the FBI agents, one of them being Peter Strzok, didn't believe that he lied. So we've got to get to the bottom of that. But if McCabe lied to this, to the IG, if he lied to people within the FBI, and if he leaked information that should have never been leaked, it would be surprising that he would not be brought up on charges.
Greg Jarrett, there are a lot of questions legally tonight. The IG has no prosecutorial powers, none. That gets into the issue of what Tillis and Cornyn and Graham and Grassley were rightly calling for, which we have both called for. And then I want you to address the wrong law that was used by the Attorney General in his recusal.
Well, first of all, McCabe's in a load of trouble, and James Comey's in even bigger trouble. For McCabe, he's looking at making a false and misleading statement, punishable by up to 5 years behind bars, and for every false statement, it's an additional crime. Second, obstruction of justice. It follows along the same line. If he's not telling the truth in an investigation, he's obstructing it. That's obstruction of justice. And for every time he does it, it's yet another crime. James Comey, I mean, you can multiply it by 10.
Talk about Rod Rosenstein.
Rod Rosenstein, if he well knew that this dossier was unverified and uncorroborated, and yet he signed off on it, then he's committed one of at least 6, if not all 6, felony statutes.
And the deep state protects itself. Congressman Chaffetz, I am a huge supporter of law enforcement. This actually hurts to talk about. This is not rank and file FBI. These are the top echelon. We rely on them. We trust them. We trust our intel community. We give them the powerful tools of intelligence. And I'm looking at all this and I'm saying, how could this happen in this country at this level? Forget the media. They're useless. So-called journalists are pathetic. How did we get here? How do we fix all this?
My grandfather was a career FBI agent, and I think this country reveres the FBI. But you're going to have to make sure that justice and that Lady Liberty who has that blindfold doesn't take a little peek and say, oh, you know, it's Clinton, so we're going to go easy on her and those around him. The best way to restore the confidence of the American people is to make sure that those, even in the highest positions of power, are held accountable. And that is to go after them and go to a grand jury and go before and prosecute these people if they believe that there's been a crime. And there's plenty of evidence that that has absolutely happened.
All right, John Solomon, we're not keeping that out of the discussion. I'm just trying to go in chronological order here. Forgive me. This is an important night with a lot of news. But you have now interviewed the FBI supervisor who warned Comey that the warrantless surveillance program was ineffective, also being abused. Is that true?
He said it was clearly able to be abused, and that was deeply concerning to him. But more importantly, it was invading Americans' privacies every day without catching any terrorists. He said in 13 years, he did an audit. In 13 years, the FBI only made one potential disruption of a terrorism case. And by the way, from using this program, and by the way, they had also found the information through traditional. So we're spying on Americans by the tens of thousands of leads they looked at in this program, and they only got one terrorism thing. And this is the program. Section 215 would be the program if you were building a case in 2016 against the Trump administration or the Trump campaign to try to prove collusion. You would use this power to try to find the connecting of the dots. This is the exact power that could have been abused in the middle of the Russia investigation or any of the other many investigations that have occurred over the last 13 years. And we're not hearing this from an outsider. We're hearing it from the man who ran the program.
He's like warned like Obama. But, you know, you and Sarah also broke the story, John, about the unprecedented amount of unmaskings that have taken place. 350%, if my recollection is right, increased during the Obama years.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And this is the program that produces the evidence that then people can go and say, please unmask that for me. This is one of the most powerful programs that we've given the FBI. And for a long time, James Comey and the FBI knew it was not catching any terrorists. It was invading people's privacy. It was ripe for abuse. And he did nothing. And I think that ought to, I'm sure members of Congress, I talked to several tonight, I'm pretty sure members of Congress are going to dig deep into this revelation.
Let me go back to Sarah Carter. All right, so McCabe, he's got bigger problems than worrying about his pension tonight. I am hearing that there may be multiple criminal charges coming down the road for him, and the fact that a second special counsel is likely to be appointed in probably short order. I see that the fever pitch is now rising in Congress. I would believe the Attorney General must now act. But I want to ask you, the IG report, originally we were told it was about just Clinton emails and the investigation. It's that and so much more. What are we going to learn in this IG report, Sarah?
Oh, I think we're going to learn about the scope of the investigation, and that includes former FBI Director Comey, the possible weaponization of our intelligence community, the unmaskings, the relationships Peter Strzok, Lisa Page with McCabe. What were they doing? What were they talking about when they talked about an insurance policy? What were they planning? What was happening with the Obama administration? Because remember, they were all connected. So this went up to the highest levels, and this is what Congress is investigating right now, Sean. This IG report is not not based on just McCabe or one small instance. These will be multiple reports issued by Michael Horowitz on his investigation. He has had 1.2 million documents. That is what he has had access to, and interviews with current and former FBI agents. This is going to be a massive investigation, and a special counsel will work with him if one's appointed.
We're running out of time, Greg.
There would have been no special counsel looking into Donald Trump and Russian collusion but for Jeff Sessions' mistaken recusal. He relied on a particular code of federal regulations.
Criminal investigation or prosecution.
Right.
That wasn't the
a
standard.
Criminal investigation or prosecution when he recused himself. It was, according to James Comey, a counterintelligence probe. So Sessions didn't have to recuse himself. He either doesn't understand the law or he was snookered by Obama holdovers at the DOJ.
How much pressure do your sources in Congress, are they saying, putting pressure on the Attorney General now to have 4 senators, like they came out tonight as strongly as they did, and they're even now wanting a criminal referral on Christopher Steele, Congressman?
Absolutely. You got 4 pivotal senators. You got Trey Gowdy and John Radcliffe in the House. You've had Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows for months and months calling for this. It absolutely should happen. If you can dovetail it directly with what the Inspector General is doing so that they have the prosecutorial power, it absolutely should happen. It should happen 2 months ago.
All right, John Solomon, I know we got your breaking news, but you have been covering this almost from the get-go as well. Let's get you get the final word tonight, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Listen, my sources are telling me they're in the final stages of going through the process and determining whether a special prosecutor should be named. There are standards that have to be met. The Justice Department is looking at that. There's an outside person arranging that for the Justice Department. I think we're going to see an announcement in the next few days. And if I had to bet on where my sources are telling me, it's going to end up with a special prosecutor.
How right have we all been, really quickly, and how wrong has the media been? Real quick.
We've been totally right, and the mainstream media has been absolutely wrong. They've actually just been ignoring it.
And Sarah?
Yeah, we've been right, and unfortunately so for the American people.
Yeah. Congressman?
Their inaction is inaction. It was a conscious effort. It's one of the biggest disappointments that I've seen in the last 10 years. Absolutely, fundamentally, totally wrong, top to bottom.
John?
Yeah, my father taught me never pat yourself on the back. You're only as good as your next story. So let's wait and see what my next story is.
All right. Well, John's a little more cautious, but it's not about who is right. It's a matter about what is right. And for this to be ignored is just, there's no excuse for it. All right. Thank you all. Another big story we are following tonight. Liberals, Democrats, they continue to mobilize against President Trump's pick for the CIA director. Her name is Gina Haspel. If confirmed by the Senate, she would become the first woman to lead the CIA, to lead that agency. California Democrat Dianne Feinstein. She is now calling for the public release of documents on Haspel's involvement in enhanced interrogation and detention of radical Islamist terrorists following the attacks and the murder of 3,000 Americans on 9/11. Now, Feinstein is only the latest liberal lawmaker to question whether Haspel was too tough on jihadis. And by the way, it's not just lawmakers attacking Haspel. Joining us now with reaction, he's the host of War Stories, Oliver North. Without enhanced interrogation, there is no bin Laden. True or false, Mr. Ollie North?
Well, the folks that are currently resident down in Gitmo wouldn't be there but for what Gina Haspel and her brave colleagues did. Look, Gina Haspel is the person needed to head the CIA in this New World Disorder. Without going through all the litany of what you went through at the very beginning of this broadcast, this woman spent 30 years as an operations officer with numerous foreign postings. She is, quite frankly, admired by most of her colleagues. I've not talked to anybody at the headquarters currently or who was there who know her, who don't think the world of her. Dianne Feinstein ought to retire now. Look, she's grandstanding about waterboarding when it was deemed to be legal by the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and the President of the United States. In other words, she did her duty. It was only afterwards that they decided it really wasn't lawful. And I think I know a little bit about what it's like. What happens to people who do their duty and Congress disagrees?
Congressman, Colonel, rather, have you been waterboarded in your life and your career in the military as a Marine that served his country and had to have a Purple Heart or two? I think two.
Look, I was a SEER instructor, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. I used to teach it. I was waterboarded when I went through the course. I waterboarded at least 150 people, some of whom I'm sure are right now wondering what the heck was going on, because it was all legal before. We used to do it for training. We used to do it to people when you need to be prepared for this kind of thing. I guess that was all stopped as well now. Look, all that ended for me. I hope it ends well for the new DCI, Gina Haspel. The president and our country needs her right there, and they don't need to drag her through water torture.
What other way, if you have somebody like KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed,
right,
the mastermind of 9/11, the worst attack in American history, on our soil, killing 3,000 Americans, obviously declaring war on this country. Is there a nice way to extract information? If we build the soccer fields and we take care of the dietary concerns and we order personal chefs for those on the battlefield that are trying to kill Americans, is that going to work?
Well, I don't know. I've not been involved in anything like that. I've certainly seen people questioned in the field when they've been captured. I've put some of that up on your show from overseas. All you had to do to some of these guys was to tell them through the interpreter, this is a high-value target. It's just been grabbed by a special operations team. And I put this on the air. We couldn't show the guy's face, of course.
By
and
the way, there
him,
is a report tonight, and I haven't confirmed it, that this woman did not oversee the waterboarding of Abu Zubaydah, really showing the immediate actions, or should I say inaction, of disgraced former Broward County Deputy Scott Peterson. We have to warn you, what you are about to see is going to make your blood boil. Now, the first video that we're airing right there, we'll go slow. It shows what appears to be the start of this terrible shooting. At one point, you can actually see the person communicating on his radio and then ultimately jumping on a golf cart, driving down a corridor, presumably toward the sound of gunfire. And as you can see in this clip, minutes later, well, Peterson is outside looking at the building, utilizing his radio, and then taking up a position, as you can see, outside of the school, behind a concrete wall. Now, we're going to analyze that footage in a moment, but first, we have more fallout from the nationwide anti-gun school walkouts that took place yesterday. Remember in D.C., Democratic lawmakers called for common sense gun restrictions, and they showed up at this protest, Bernie Sanders, with armed security. That includes Bernie walking through the crowd. Look at Bernie. Oh, yeah, there he's flanked by multiple armed police officers. Don't our children deserve the same? Here with reaction, former Secret Service agent, NRA contributor Dan Bongino, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera. Let's re-rack this video, and then we'll get to the issue of, don't you think our kids deserve the same as Bernie Sanders?
Absolutely. I think there should be at least one good guy with a gun at every school, but here you had a good guy with a gun who chickened out. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the LifeLock commercial where the guy, there's a bank robbery happening. He said, I'm not a security guard, I'm a security consultant.
We need more. We need perimeters. We need full threat assessments.
Absolutely.
We need IDs. We need.
You need
two
people with
carries.
balls is what you need. This was a coward. This was a chicken.
Let's look at this, what he's doing here. All right. Now you can see, all right, he appears to be going to the golf cart. Then he's taking up a position, if you watch this video unfold, behind the concrete barrier.
You have to understand, Sean, the training manual for the Broward sheriffs is very specific. They say, they mandate that if there's one sheriff or one deputy on the scene, a gun is fired, an unarmed civilian is at risk, you go to the sound of the gunfight. You go, your presence, you charge in as the kids are running out. What this guy did is the president of the United States was absolutely right. This was a coward's action.
Let's get your reaction, Dan Bongino. This is what you do. I have never in my life, remember we had reports of 4 people from the sheriff's department that didn't go in, but then you had the local police from the area. They ran right in. So it obviously had to be, as Geraldo was saying, part of their protocol.
Yeah, it's not just the Broward Sheriff's protocol on a school shooting incident, maximum to the problem. It's every credible school shooting incident training protocol now across the country post-Columbine. Maximum to the problem, Sean. You have to attack the attacker. There is nothing that's going to stop this otherwise. And as the research on these incidents has clearly shown, once you engage that attacker, these attackers are cowards. They either kill themselves or they wind up, in that gunfight, they wind up losing their lives to the law enforcement officer or whoever confronts them back with a gun. But it does show the importance of weapons in defense on campus as well.
One other statistic. I mean, these incidents are over on average in 3 minutes. I don't care how great your local police response is. You're not going to get there in 3 minutes. I would say we need 2 retired, concealed carry, ex-military, ex-police, retired police on site on every floor in every school. And you know what we could do? We'll give them a tax break. Pay no federal or state local taxes.
I think any incentive to get the right crew in place is absolutely necessary. But as the father of 5, one a 6th grader right now, I tell you, I want a cop who's going to risk something. I want someone who's going to go to the action. My child is the most precious thing to me. To think that guy retired. He retired. You're talking about McCabe earlier, Sean. He's rushing to retire because he's in trouble. Scott Peterson rushed to retire before he was going to be fired, brought up on charges. I think that how that man could live, I hope he moves to the Bahamas or someplace, because he should be ashamed of it.
But I don't understand it. It's not in our DNA. But it's also very important to point out, Dan Bongino, this is not the 99.9% of law enforcement that we all know. I mean, I basically live with law enforcement. This is my family. It's my friends. That's all I know in my life.
Yeah, Sean, I know 2 guys from the Secret Service. One, personally, I actually lived with them at one point. We were in training, who were involved in use of force incidents themselves and went right to the problem and did what they have to do. You know, one of them did it off duty while he was with his family in a mall where he saved a kid from, getting beat up and was in a use of force incident involving a firearm. Now, it's nearly universal bravery amongst cops. Unfortunately, though, sometimes we see incidents like this where in those critical seconds, you make the wrong.
Have been made. Nobody's leaving. The president said it. I saw earlier today, I believe it was from the Oval Office, that nobody is scheduled to leave at all in spite of rampant, wild speculation. What can you tell us?
The president makes the personnel decisions and announcements in this White House, Sean. He was elected, after all. His name was on the ballot.
Wait a minute, it's not Maggie Hagerman?
And I just am amazed. Well, first of all, no, it's no other journalist. But it is, the rampant speculation itself is a story, because it's so incredible to me that the media writ large, and it's filled with people who are trying to get the story, but it's filled with lots of people trying to get the president also. They won't cover policy. They cover personnel. They won't cover principle. They cover palace intrigue. And they keep on recycling rumors and stories constantly that have no basis. In fact, I think they figure, hey, if a stop clock is at least right twice a day, eventually I'll get this right. So if I predict a whole year in advance, so-and-so is on thin ice, so-and-so is going to go, and they do a year later, I could just recycle those clips where people said the president has full confidence in X, and 6 months, a year later, it changes. This president has every right to put the team around him that he thinks aligns with his vision, his values, but he is the one who controls the timing, the tone, and content of all substantive and personnel decisions, and I respect that enormously. You know, Sean, people say, I see chaos and churn. A lot of us see streamlining of some parts and sophistication, because we had too many people over time, and we had too many of the wrong people. Other people are leaving on their own volition, their own free will, and they will truly be missed in this White House. But this president has a great deal of joy on the job, a lot of fake news about he's fuming, he's angry, but he's made very clear what his vision is too, on North Korea, on the Iran nuclear deal, on taxes, on infrastructure, on DACA, you name it. He could not be more explicit. And so he wants a team around him that supports that.
Let me ask you this. I started the program tonight, Kellyanne. There comes a point where, with all that has happened, and the special counsel, and this weight that has literally been there almost from day one, and everything is now boomerang back. We find out what? Oh, Hillary fixed the primary. Imagine if Donald Trump did. The fix was in on crimes we know she committed with the email server. We have an IG report coming. Then you have this whole issue of she purchased bought and paid for, Russian lies, Russian government lies, paid a British spy for them to lie to the American people about Donald Trump. Even the guy that creates the dossier cast out, he didn't even believe his own material. And then it's used to get a FISA warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate. You've lived under all of this. Where is the special counsel looking into the crimes we know were committed?
Well, I see the content of your show plenty, and I saw the senators earlier in your broadcast, and I think they put it best, which is that different questions are being raised by those who are in charge of these types of investigations, Sean, and there's real questions lingering out there among many people in the public. Why the double standard for that woman who lost the election, whose name I never say on TV anymore? Why the special treatment for her? And I think what America saw this week is a great reminder as to why they rejected her and elected him. Because she first ignored all the people in these states, then she insulted them again this week.
Let me play
saying
this.
That they only vote the way their husbands tell them to. I can't even say it without laughing so hard.
No. Let's play it. She said, women in America, white women, only voted the way their bosses, their husbands, and their sons told them to vote. You can't make this up. Let's roll the tape.
We don't do well with married white women. And part of that is an identification with the Republican Party and a sort of ongoing pressure to vote the way that your husband, your boss, your son, whoever, believes you should. His whole campaign, Make America Great Again, was looking backwards. You know, you didn't like black people getting rights. You don't like women, getting jobs. You don't want to, see that Indian American succeeding more than you are. Whatever your problem is, I'm going to solve it.
Then she drops the race card. And I'm thinking, okay, what century is this woman living in if she believes that husbands, bosses, and women's sons direct their voting habits?
It really, in the space of a minute or two, she managed to insult most of the women that she pretends to be protecting and speaking on behalf as the faux feminist she's become. But let me say, she's actually insulting people who are going to go to the ballot box this fall, including in states, it would seem, where you have these red state Democratic senators who are now so upset with her. Claire McCaskill came out against her. Heidi Heitkamp, her former campaign manager, Patty Solis Doyle, came out against her in these comments. Sherrod Brown, who's up for re-election in Ohio. All these states that she lost. And let me just say, she's insulting voters in states, calling them backward and non-progressive, non-diverse, that her husband carried twice and her boss, Barack Obama, carried twice. And it's just remarkable to me that she had her boss and her husband telling America how to vote, and that didn't matter.
By the
they
way,
didn't want her because they didn't see her as honest, trustworthy, or speaking for them. She has nothing in common with the average woman. And